I'm not going to put a screen up because I'm actually doing something that I've never done before. I'm going to tell you a very personal story about how I got here. And it's not something that I've ever really presented or really told very many people, but it's the many moments that's kind of led me to this place in front of all of you and ultimately led to a career in academia. But I just want to say that it's a story that's a much larger picture than what I'm going to paint with just my story. When you look to the left and the right, you're looking at your collaborators, you're looking at your mentors and mentees, you're looking at teachers, and this is the network of people that we really need to get the job done. It's not only to do research, but it's to help us grow as a community, to develop truly novel ideas, and ultimately help others, because I truly believe that the reason we work in natural hazards research is because we want to help people. Something that I think is really interesting is that in this audience, 49 of us are students. And really, when I think about the mix of academics, educators, industry professionals, and policymakers that are in this room, it's the students that we care about. Because they're the next generation of engineers and scientists. They're the ones really driving innovation. They're the ones that, if we ensure their success, we can ensure our success. And so I'm going to tell you my story, but just keep in mind that it's reflective of something much larger. And so just kind of think of the moment that led you here. I know exactly what mine is. I participated as a research undergraduate student at the University of Illinois. And I really wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this REU experience, and I'm going to paint the picture of my academic career that starts at this moment. So these REU programs, they're a hands-on 10-week program. It was a little bit longer under NEAS, but under NEARI it's 10 weeks. It's where undergraduate students are settled across different sites across the country. They're paired with faculty and graduate student mentors, and they're engaged in a research project in reconnaissance, cyber infrastructure, data management, experimental testing, and simulations. And their majors could be from engineering, they could be from architecture, social sciences, or computer scientists. And they just have this mini research project that's all theirs. And for me, it was really my introduction to independent thinking, critical problem solving, and ultimately an addiction to research that I still hold to this day. And so these people actually became my peers, and ultimately they're the people I see again and again and again when I come to meetings and workshops like this. So I kind of, in preparation for this talk, I was like, well, what have I done? And so I sort of put up a list of all the different projects I've worked on and the different milestones that you would sort of think about when you think of an academic career. And really, it all boils down to this green line in 2009 when I participated in this REU internship. And so if I hadn't gotten this initial inspiration at this point, I would have never been able to do any of the things that came after it. So I was, in 2009, an REU student at the University of Illinois. I was at the mezzanine level of the Newmark lab, and for the earthquake engineers in this room, Newmark was one of the forerunners of modern earthquake seismic design analysis. And so I'm in this place named after this gigantuum of a man, and I'm looking down on this facility that was nothing like I've ever seen before. It was so much bigger and at scale than anything that I had at my home institution at University of Kansas. And I just knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. But I didn't do it all at once. And so this is me at 20, as an RU student. I think I look the same. But, I got an email at Simpson7007@AOL.com. And it said, congratulations, you've been accepted into this NEAS REU program. And I had no idea what NEAS was, so I Googled it. And then I thought it was spam, because then they said, we're going to fly you to Hawaii to participate in the NEAS annual conference. And then after that, we're going to fly you to the University of Buffalo, and you're going to be able to present your work with your peers of other REU students. And then on top of that, we're going to give you $2,000 to go to Illinois for 3 months. And I thought, $2,000, that's a lot of money. Like, naive, right? Now I live in San Francisco. It's not a lot of money. But that conference was instrumental in making me think about natural hazards research as an actual occupation. The title of that conference was Seismic Mitigation in a Flat World, and every single personal statement that I've written, whether it's for graduate school or for faculty positions or just for anything about myself, I've referenced the title of that conference. It is there every single time, because when I think of a flat world, I think of emerging technologies, I think of more data, and I think to account for that, we need all of us. It needs to be all of us together. It needs to be a network of people that are really going to change the world. So, I go to Hawaii, and I meet up with all of my peers, and something that I'm starting to realize is that, actually, this is really fun. Like, we're in Hawaii. And this idea of research being sort of this, you're in a room looking at a laptop all the time, was not what I was experiencing. I was experiencing the sort of community that we have here, where you network with people and you talk with people and you really have a good time. And if it hadn't been for that conference in Hawaii, I don't think I would have even thought about applying to graduate school. And so when you look at where I applied to master's programs, it was at the NEAS sites. And I applied to all of them, mostly. There were a couple on the East Coast. I was like, I don't really. Sorry. I'm from the Midwest, And so I applied to all of them. And I remember having a conversation with these REU students, and we're talking about what grad school we're going to go to. And some of the participants were from California, and they were like, California, it has this really good seismic program. You should think about going to Berkeley. And I was like, what's Berkeley? I have no idea, which is so strange because that's where I ended up. And it was honestly incredible because I got to work with Professor Stephen Mahan, who was really part of this amazing legacy in earthquake engineering. He was truly inspirational. And I really can't tell my story without having him in it. So he was one of the initial leaders of the Near East Sim Center. He passed away in 2018, and I am one of his last PhD students. And his ideas and his ways of thinking about things, like the man had just so many ideas. Like you'd walk into a room and you'd be like, well, I want to talk to you about this thing, and there'd be 20 other ideas that had nothing to do with what you came in to talk about. And it's that level of inspiration that really made me want to stay in academia past the PhD. But it all started with the REU program. When I started reaching out to other people who were REUs, I was actually surprised because I knew most of them. And I didn't realize that they were REU students as well. And I know I have a lot of quotes up here, but it's just so many people were so passionate about it, I had to put all the quotes. But I just want to read the top one, 2012, NEAS at Buffalo. This is by Laura Hernandez. She's going to actually come up later in this talk. So this was the first time I experienced being in a large campus setting, and I was in awe of the structural labs and the civil engineering department, and genuinely, this exact experience inspired me to stay in the field of earthquake engineering and pursue my master's, and eventually my PhD. And she just graduated this past year from UC Davis with her PhD. And so it's truly phenomenal the amount of passion and excitement everyone that I talked to had around these types of programs. And so, I was very inspired by this work, and so when I turned to University of Kansas, I started applying for internships, and I ended up working in a town in Greensburg, Kansas, that was leveled by a tornado. They built back completely green, all LEED Platinum commercial buildings. And then I decided to apply for another internship the following year, where I worked on tornado reconnaissance in my hometown, St. Louis, where we looked at the tornado damage to the St. Louis International Lambert Airport. And I just want to emphasize something that's not really in the data when you think about these REU programs. I wouldn't have applied to these internships if it hadn't been for the confidence that I had gained through that REU experience. Just would never even crossed my mind to apply to these programs. So they're incredibly, incredibly impactful. In 2013, I actually started my own PhD at Berkeley. I was the last experimental test, or one of the last experimental tests at the NEAS at Berkeley lab, under that title. And then I went from being the mentor, or the mentee, to the mentor. And so you can see 3 of the REU students who began working with me that summer. I just want to call out Mara Minner. She was my first REU student. She also was an RU student with me, ended up getting her master's at Berkeley, and then she ended up being an engineer at Farrell and Ellissessor in San Francisco before becoming a project manager down in San Diego. And I just want to say, this girl was phenomenal. I have no doubt she is going to be the leader when we think about structural engineering and earthquake engineering over the next several decades. And I have the pride to say that she, even though I was her mentor, she's part of my network. So you get to pass these experiences on to the next generation, but it's really they're the ones building you up. And these aren't the only programs sort of geared towards early career researchers. So in 2013, I began participating in a number of US-Japan collaboration meetings, and I'm really thankful for John for showing the actual scale of these tests at eDefense, because that doesn't quite do it justice. But as a PhD student and as an early career faculty member, over the course of 7 years, I went to Japan 6 times. And I actually was involved with the US-Japan collaborative team where we actually tested at that eDefense shake table in 2020. Just to call up a couple of the people that are in the photo, you have Dorian. She was an RU student at Berkeley. She is now at Martin & Martin as a structural engineer. And then Michael on the left, we met in Japan. He did his PhD at Buffalo and is now in Los Angeles at KPFF. So again, part of my network. And I'm sure everyone recognizes Jim Rickles. Jim, I don't know if you remember me. But he ended up being the co-PI on this project at testing at eDefense, and we've collaborated on a number of different projects since then. This has now been discontinued, but I want to give a shout out to some other programs that are also available to PhD students, or at least this used to be. There was the NSF EPSI program where you actually wrote your own proposal to fund your own research project at a select number of countries in East Asia and the Pacific. I went to Taiwan, and it's these types of experiences where you get to really build up your partnerships and networks. I see these people all the time. Like every time I go to a workshop or a conference or a meeting and there's some international component, these are the students I see. And those are the types of collaborations and friendships that I hope to continue to grow throughout my career, but they all started really here when I was a PhD student. When Nice became NEARI, it kind of opened the doors in many ways. Suddenly I couldn't just be an earthquake engineer. I really had to think about becoming multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, extend my research beyond the bounds of just earthquakes and look at natural hazards. And I think I visited every NEARI site as a result of the experimental facility workshops. The only one I haven't visited is Lehigh. Sorry, Jim. But like I said, we've collaborated a lot, so it's okay. And every time I went to one of these meetings, I had a proposal idea. I cannot say that I left any one of these meetings without writing some sort of proposal from it, which is really incredible given all the NEARI sites. And so these sort of experiences and opportunities are really important. And I just want to give lower right-hand corner a shout out to MEX, which really enabled me to return to this idea of hybrid simulation that I hadn't really thought of since my time as an REU student. And I would say that has become one of my main research interests. So these sort of opportunities really allow us to smoothly operate as early career researchers. They allow us to build a network early. They allow us to collaborate quickly, because if we're going to make real change, we need that network of people. So through NEARI, there's a couple other programs that you can participate in. I also participated in the NEARI Summer Institute, where we learned about different grants. And what was really quite cool about this experience is look where everybody's from across the United States. And so you're gathering people from everywhere across the country, and they're all coming from different universities, which means they're coming with different ideas, which means they're coming with different problems and ways to solve them. And so getting us all in the same room right off the bat is extremely important, not just to learn about NEARI and the programs that are available to us, but also to really build our network, not just with researchers, but also K-12 educators. And so, this is really exponential. And I told Larry this morning that I had a picture of him, so he knows now. And I'm sorry if any of you have random pictures up in these slides. But I just want to give a small slice, because the more I attend things like this and the more programs I participate in, my network just keeps growing exponentially. And so I'm just going to take a mini slice of 2018, and it's not all the collaborations I made in 2018. So I'm co-PI. Larry's the lead PI of that e-defense shake table test that's funded through NSF. We actually met, I don't think he remembers, at 2009 as a NIST REU student. I met him again in both 2013 and 2018 in Japan, where we collaborated on that idea. Professor Lee, he was actually my PhD mentor at the University of Illinois while I was an REU student. He's now at the University of Kansas, my alma mater. And so he's still in my network. Esteban Garcia, we met at a NERI Rapid workshop. I learned later, when I was actually preparing for this presentation, that he was a 2012 NIST REU student. And he is now an assistant professor at the University of Michigan. And randomly, we also ran into each other at a climbing gym in Los Angeles one time. And then finally, I just want to go back to Laura Hernandez. We met in New Zealand in a reconnaissance effort. She was also a NIST REU student, 2012 NIST REU, and in 2018, she actually applied to Oregon State University, ended up going to UC Davis. But I have seen her a number of times since then at almost every EERI meeting. So, a small slice of something that's really growing exponentially. But I just want to say that this journey is not quite done. So thanks so much to Thalia and Robin and the NCO team for giving me this data for these next few slides. If you look at the NIST REU program and then the NERI Summer Institute and NERI REUs, we have males in orange, females in blue, and they're about even in these programs. But when we actually compare it to the 28 data about women in the engineering workforce or women in doctoral programs, we see that it's not nearly as even. And so our work in terms of these students then going to the workforce is still not complete. Is it changing? There we go. Oh, and I don't know why that disappeared. And then just to sort of take that a step further and look at the transition from the NIST REUs to the NERI REUs and NERI Summer Institute in terms of demographics, and I just want to be clear that underrepresented groups here are Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, Hispanic or Latinx, multiracial or American Indian or Alaskan Native. We can see that we are becoming increasingly faceted in these pie charts as we go from the NIST era to the NERI era. And so we're seeing improvement, but when we look at the numbers from 2008, even though these two charts, I wrote them on my hand so I wouldn't forget, 35% self-identify as from underrepresented groups in the NERI REU category, and then another 21% identify as being from underrepresented groups for the NERI Summer Institute. When you look at that 2018 data again, what you see is that people of color are less than 10% of the STEM workforce. And it's actually really closer to 5, depending on which group you're looking at. And it's even less when you look at those who pursue PhDs. And so these programs are just the beginning. We have a lot of work that still needs to be done. And so I truly believe this mentor-mentee relationship is circular. So this was this past summer at Oregon State University. And you can see my graduate student and I, as well as the REU students that we're mentoring. And just as my career began as an REU student, I'm hoping that my graduate student and me can now mentor the next generation. And I want them to pass it on yet again to the next generation after that. Again, as I was looking through all this data, it was pretty amazing, some of these numbers. So from 2000 to 2011, 2007, 2011, all the REU students were asked the question, did the REU have any influence on your educational career path? And of 80 students, 70 said yes. which is just, I mean, I'm showing my story, but it's not unique, not by a long shot. These are incredibly impactful programs. And so, again, as looking through this data, I started just collecting quotes. And if you want to talk to me after, I would be happy to share them with you. I just want to read a couple because I think they're really phenomenal. Like, fantastic, describing the RAU program. It was the best job I've ever had, 3 exclamation points. The program significantly influenced my decision to pursue a master's degree by exposing me to research. This quote was repeated over and over again about people not thinking about graduate school until they had done an RAU. And then this one's actually my favorite. I learned that a lot of minds don't always think the same, which I think that's a testament to these programs and bringing together people from all different perspectives to think about research in a different way. I just want to say these students have gone to work at Degenkolb, NASA, Department of Transportation, Exponent, Google, Pearl Harbor, Kiewit, IBM, the city of Chicago, and I actually tried making a list of all, and that's as far as I got. But these are our workforce, these students. And I truly believe that they're inspirational in getting students into natural hazards. So this one, again, I wasn't planning on pursuing a master's degree. Again, I wrote it on my hand. So from 238 students that were surveyed during the Nice RAU days, 71% went to graduate school, 12% pursued PhDs, and 9 became faculty members. And those are just truly incredible numbers. And so I just want to end on this slide. These experiences are incredibly important. And I truly believe that the network starts here. Thank you.